The United States Marine Corps has a long and storied history, dating back before the halls of Montezuma and even before the seas of Tripoli during the Barbary Wars, all the way back to November 10th, 1775, and the Revolutionary War, all of which occurred long before this place called Washington had been given its name. The storied tradition of the Marines don't evoke thoughts of Washington. There are no Marine Corps bases here. No beachheads were established here, nor fortresses defended by them. But nonetheless, the connection between the Marines and this place exists. And it is as deep and as solemn as there is. After World War I was over, many believed that Puget Sound should become home to a naval air station. Land was set aside on the west shore of Lake Washington, and the Navy began construction on Sand Point Naval Air Station in the early 1920s, to include the airfield. In 1924, this airfield would be the starting and ending point of the first successful aerial circumnavigation of the Earth, starting with a squadron of 4 Boeing-modified Douglas aircraft DT-2 biplanes. Two of the 4 would complete the journey, landing back at Sand Point in September of 1924. The tale of that 175-day, 26,000-mile journey is an epic story in and of itself. But it was another squadron of planes over 22 years later that forever intertwined the history of Washington with that of the United States Marine Corps. World War II had ended the previous year when a squadron of 6 Curtiss R-5C transport planes, also known as the C-46, took off from San Diego on December 10, 1946, bound for Seattle's Sand Point Naval Air Station with more than 200 Marines aboard. At the time, these were among the largest airplanes in both commercial and military service, able to carry 36 passengers. Because the cabins of the C-46 weren't pressurized, it was restricted to flying at about 9,000 feet elevation when carrying passengers or personnel, although it was capable of flying much higher. Most of the flight was uneventful, but the squadron flew into foul weather as soon as they reached the Columbia River near Portland. As they proceeded north near Mount St. Helens, the weather went from bad to worse. Visibility was near zero, owing to the weather, and that it was now getting dark as well. 4 of the 6 planes turned back and landed at Portland, while just 2 continued on. The 5th transport plane landed safely at Sand Point just after 5 o'clock p.m., but the 6th was last heard from at 4:13 when the pilot, Major Robert Riley, radioed that they were taking on ice on the wings and requested permission to fly above the weather and possibly the clouds. Permission to ascend was granted, but the 413 radio transmission proved to be the last, and the plane never made it to Sand Point. The following day, search plans were made, but the foul weather kept planes grounded, and rain, snow, and fog made any notion of conducting ground searches a waste of effort. Park rangers working in Mount Rainier National Park reported that they had heard a plane fly overhead the previous afternoon, leading them to believe that the plane may have crashed into the mountain. This was many miles to the east of the planned flight path, so the civil authorities disregarded the theory believing that the plane likely went down well to the west, in the forested area somewhere south of Eatonville. It was nearly a week before the weather improved, and on the 6th day, searches commenced. More than 24 aircraft joined in the search, but by then, it was acknowledged that the extreme weather and the passage of time made it a near certainty that this would be a mission of investigation and recovery, not rescue. In any event, no trace was found. Over the following weeks, aeronautics experts and meteorologists analyzed the facts and determined that conditions on the evening the plane was lost had changed drastically compared to what was believed by both the pilot and the controllers at the time. As the plane flew north from Portland, the prevailing southeast wind had changed to one blowing hard from the west at an estimated 70 miles per hour. This was likely unknown to Major Riley, who was flying with instruments only and no visibility at over 180 miles per hour. This shift could have blown the plane miles to the east and right into the flanks of Mount Rainier. Reports of hearing a plane fly over from residents living in the towns of Mineral, Randall, and Packwood provided even more evidence to back up that possibility. Mount Rainier is a massive mountain, rising to 14,411 feet. With the winter snows and the dark color of the plane, it was little wonder that weeks of searches on land and air turned up nothing. From the air, any wreckage that wasn't covered by several feet of snow would likely be indistinguishable from rocks. After weeks of searching and finding nothing, the efforts were called off, and all the men aboard were presumed lost, possibly forever. The following summer, on July 21, 1947, Park Ranger Bill Butler was hiking on Success Cleaver on the south flank of the mountain when he spotted possible wreckage on South Tahoma Glacier, including what appeared to be a seat from an aircraft at about the 9,000-foot level. This area had never been climbed or crossed because it was simply too treacherous, with massive crevasses forming and closing every day, along with frequent avalanches and rock slides from above. 2 days later, Ranger Butler led an expedition of 8 climbers at the risk of great personal peril up the mountain, finally reaching the 9,500-foot level of the glacier after 2 treacherous days of climbing. Fragments of an aircraft were located deeply embedded in glacial ice. They weren't able to extract any of it, but did find some tattered remains of what appeared to be a military uniform and a United States Marine Corps health record, which was then confirmed by Navy personnel as belonging to one of the Marines aboard the lost flight. At long last, the fate of the plane, her crew and passengers, was now known. When the weather permitted, additional expeditions up the glacier were led by Butler, and in August, 1,000 feet higher up on the glacier and at the base of a 3,000-foot vertical escarpment at 10,500 feet elevation, he found the smashed nose cone of the aircraft. Inside were the bodies of 11 United States Marines. Later that month, 14 more bodies were identified, most of them completely encased in ice, along with the bulk of the smashed wreckage of the transport plane. Only small items from the dead Marines along with some other effects could be retrieved. All of the experts agreed that the risks that would have to be undertaken to recover the 32 Marines were far too high. They, along with the family members of the deceased, all agreed that it would be better to leave them and put no more lives at risk in attempting to bring them home. Today, Sam Point Naval Air Station no longer exists, and in its place is the beautiful Magnuson Park. And from there, the mountain called Tahoma can be readily seen. Even those of us that have lived here all our lives don't take our great mountain for granted. We all take notice when she's out in all her splendor and majesty. But knowing that she is also hallowed ground, the final resting place for 32 young men who gave their lives in service to our country, maybe seeing her next time will mean just that much more. Semper Fi.